Okay, welcome back to Culty Country with Kirsten and Jess. For all of 2026, we've been doing a monthly podcast recording, and we are almost to the 6-month mark. So we thought we would take today, June's episode, to kind of talk about what makes a cult and then examine the last 5 podcasts to see if they fit the cult criteria. So are you ready to jump in? Okay. When most people hear the word cult, they imagine isolated compounds, matching robes, bizarre rituals, and charismatic leaders predicting the end of the world, which we've seen in a couple of our things. Obviously, the truth is much more complicated, and most cults don't look dangerous at first. So, they're meeting a need. They seem innocuous. You just want to sign up for a class, or you just want to go to a service or whatever. So they really are, they don't glaringly stand out all the time. Many of them begin as self-help movements, which we've seen, spiritual communities, political organizations, wellness groups, business coaching programs, or even social circles promising purpose, belonging, healing, or enlightenment.
Which we've seen all of those.
And this kind of raises the uncomfortable question: how do intelligent, capable people become involved in destructive, high control groups? And we've touched on that a little bit too. The answer is important, and it is because cults do not recruit stupid people. They recruit just human beings. So they're not discriminating against if you're really smart or really dumb. In some cases, they're discriminating if you're really rich or really poor.
Yes.
But today we'll walk through what the most common characteristics are that are shared by legitimate cults and high control organizations. We'll look at how they recruit, how they gain influence, how they isolate members, how they maintain control, and why leaving can be psychologically devastating. So this episode and all of our episodes, it's not about mocking the victims. I know we make jokes sometimes. It's how we kind of cope with this uncomfortable material. But we certainly are not wanting to make fun of victims. So I don't know that there'll be a lot of comedy in this one, but there has been in our past episodes, and it's not to insult anybody. It is about understanding manipulation. So let's first kind of define cult. So not every unusual religion is a cult. Not every intense community is a cult, and not every strict organization is automatically abusive and a cult. Experts generally focus less on the belief systems, but more on the behavioral control. So a healthy group, so one that is not a cult, would still allow personal freedom, critical thinking, is very, very important for all of us, outside relationships, informed consent, and the ability to leave without punishment. A destructive cult, by contrast, typically depends on excessive control over members' thoughts, emotions, relationships, behavior, or identity. So the key is kind of coercion, not weirdness, but coercion. And cults can exist, again, in religion, politics, business, therapy movements, online communities, extremist activism, fitness organizations, and even in our influencer culture. So the structure matters more than the label. So let's look at the charismatic leader, because we know that's a very common characteristic. So not every cult revolves around a central authority figure. A lot do. But that they usually do have a charismatic, highly confident, frequently narcissistic leader. The person presents themselves as uniquely enlightened, which we've seen. Morally superior, spiritually gifted, intellectually exceptional, or somehow chosen.
Which we've seen.
Yeah, we've seen. I mean, that's why we question the organizations we're looking into. Over time, the leader becomes the ultimate source of truth. So members stop evaluating claims independently because that disagreement gets framed as, and I know we touched on this in another episode, that disagreement is framed as ignorance, weakness, betrayal, spiritual failure, or corruption. So you slowly get conditioned to not question this person. Many cult leaders claim special revelation, secret knowledge, divine authority, revolutionary insight, or exclusive access to truth. And very critically, the leader is often exempt from the rules that everybody else must follow. That double standard is a major warning sign. So be on the lookout. The next characteristic, and one that I certainly learned a lot about in the last 15 years, examining a very specific church, was love bombing. So one of the most powerful recruitment tactics is something called love bombing, where new recruits receive overwhelming attention, a lot of affection, praise, validation, encouragement, and emotional warmth. People might feel, oh, I found my community. Like, people here really understand me, or I finally belong somewhere. And of course, we all want that. We all want a sense of community. So they love bomb you to make you feel all those warm fuzzies, to make you want to be part of that community. So for individuals experiencing loneliness, grief, transition, identity struggles, or uncertainty, that emotional intensity can be incredibly powerful. Pausing there, it's part of why they target single moms. So if you're in a store and you're approached by a church because you look like you might be a single mom doing the grocery shopping, that might be why they're targeting you. They target college kids because they're young, their brains are still underdeveloped, and they're away from their parents, they're homesick, they're looking for belonging and community. Like, they're really cunning. They know exactly what vulnerable population to attack. They're really good. These cults are really good at meeting emotional needs initially. So that's the key phrase, is initially. You're going to get everything you want and need to make you feel like you're part of it. But over time, that changes.
They slowly take it away.
Yep. Yeah. That acceptance becomes conditional. And the warmth lasts as long as conformity lasts. So the more committed you are, the more love you probably receive. So another defining factor of cults is isolation. So once your commitment deepens, isolation often begins. Sometimes it is physical isolation, sometimes it's psychological isolation, and members may gradually be encouraged to spend less time with family, distrust outsiders, avoid critics, abandon previous friendships, or consume only group-approved information. Again, in the last 15 years, I've looked into one specific church because this happened to somebody I very much love, who really distanced themselves from everybody who loved them and their family members.
That isolation is so scary. And what I know have touched on multiple times, of if you see somebody being pulled away, like, just to keep reaching out.
Yep.
And not give up on them.
It's really tempting to get mad and cut ties because you feel like you're being rejected. So you feel like you want to reject back, but do not do that. If you see somebody getting sucked into something, they say that the best thing to do is stay available, stay reaching out, even if you aren't getting it back. Just keep doing it, because someday they might need you.
Yep.
Additional in the isolation bucket, outside perspectives become dangerous. So former members become traitors. Critics become enemies, which is part of why they separate you from your family. Concerned family becomes toxic. This creates an us versus them worldview. And that worldview is essential to that cult's survival. So they have to make themselves elite and privileged and like in a bubble, so that everybody feels like they're part of a cause against what everybody else misunderstands. Once people start hearing alternative perspectives, the group gains enormous influence over reality itself. So, Heaven's Gate.
Yep.
Like, it was that's just the first one I think of. And we are going to examine cult organization by organization that we've done pods through at the end of this. But in reading through all of this, I immediately was like, oh, maybe these places are more cult-like than I realized.
Yeah.
Another characteristic, golly, like I just woke up, is control of information. So destructive cults often regulate information aggressively. They would like to discourage you from reading criticism, researching the organization, questioning leadership, or accessing outside media. Again, also part of that church I researched.
Yeah.
And additionally, they'll sue people that post things about them. So that's terrifying. Some groups rewrite history. Others create internal language that reshapes perception. Terms become emotionally loaded. So simple doubts become negativity, lack of faith, ego, disloyalty, or spiritual attack. Language itself becomes a control mechanism. And when groups control information, they begin controlling thought. So that one's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
Let's see.
To like lose thought is just scary.
To not be safe. Oh, that was the other thought I had when I was reading this piece. Was I thought about Sister Wives, which is a TV show I'm kind of addicted to.
Same.
And how they grotesquely overuse that's not safe.
Yes.
And it's just like they're easy out of a conversation. Well, they learned that somewhere, and they learned that within their faith, that anybody against polygamy was not safe, and that they were there to destroy the polygamy system and take children away from their parents. So that word of safe, like, is the fear based. Yeah. Ugh.
And that if you don't treat them right, then you're not a safe person to them. And even if it's their own sister wife.
Yeah.
They talk about like,
if you challenge anything that they do or think, then you're not a safe person. But then in that TV show, they weaponize that word 100%. To manipulate one another, which is kind of beautiful. But
yeah, that shows.
Yeah, I mean, language, like this saying, language is the control mechanism there. Okay, back to seriousness. Another characteristic is demand for purity. Many cults promote impossible standards of purity or perfection. Members are pressured to eliminate doubt, confess flaws. That makes me think of Scientology. Suppress independent desires, and constantly self-monitor. Again, Scientology. We should do a Scientology one.
And it makes me think of Heaven's Gate with them doing the castration and everything like that of themselves. It just, you're suppressing all of that.
That's so true.
Actually, physically, like you're not even just by thought, but you are.
How sad.
Yeah.
And nothing is ever enough. So you can always be more loyal, more obedient, more committed, more disciplined. And this will create chronic guilt and dependency. Outside of cults, that's a little bit of a couple of different faiths.
Yes.
So I won't call them out, but I'm sure everybody knows which faiths are very guilt-ridden. The member begins believing, if I'm suffering, the problem must be me. Ooh, that also reminds me of that Twin Flames cult or cult-like organization.
Yeah. That's what I was like, huh.
Yeah. You can't blame the system. It's you as the individual. So that psychological inversion is extremely powerful. Another characteristic is confession, and surveillance. So again, Scientology comes from that. Another common is invasive confession. So members may be pressured to reveal fears, secrets, trauma, sexual history, doubts, or personal weaknesses, sometimes publicly, sometimes privately to leadership, and the disclosures create a vulnerability. And that vulnerability creates leverage. So in many cult environments, privacy gradually disappears. Members monitor one another and tattle on one another to gain favor. Reporting becomes normalized. Suspicion becomes loyalty. The group effectively becomes its own surveillance system. It's really sick.
That's crazy.
Another characteristic is fear. And this is one of the strongest tools that cults will use. So fear of punishment, fear of spiritual condemnation, social rejection, failure, catastrophe, or losing salvation. So leaving the group could be framed as dangerous, evil, cursed, psychologically fatal, or proof of corruption. So that's all under the bucket of fear. So if some former members report feeling intense panic after leaving, even when they intellectually know the group was harmful, they stay. Like that fear conditioning gets deeply ingrained and they just are afraid to leave.
Well, and I think with the fear, and you just told them these people, these secrets, I would be scared that now they're going to out what I've just told them that could be a very deeply personal thing. And now they have this leverage, like you said, over you. And now you, like, the fear of just having your deep, dark secrets revealed could be enough to keep you there.
Yeah. Like in the business world, like the business self-help ones, you don't want your whole industry to collapse because your reputation goes down the tube. So yeah, that's pretty terrifying. I often wonder if people think of Scientology specifically when you're kind of forced to confess like every little thing that's happened in your life. If you've lived a really charmed life, do you just start making stuff up to get through it? Because I don't think they're going to believe you if you're like, I've never been traumatized. I've never stolen a 5-cent piece of candy. I've never done any of this stuff. Like they're going to be like, no, it's in there. It's in there. They're trying to make you feel terrible about yourself. Yeah. I wonder how many people lie.
Yeah.
Another characteristic is identity erasure. Is that how you say that word? Erasure? Erasing? I'll just say erasing.
Eraser.
Eraser. That probably could be it. It just looks funny. It looks like the band from the 80s.
Erasure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, coach.
Yeah.
Healthy communities allow individuality. So that's obviously not going to be in a cult. Destructive cults often erase it. Over time, members may change how they speak, dress differently, or dress the same. Lose personal goals, abandon hobbies, distance themselves from previous identities, or define themselves entirely through the group. Again, my friend I lost, I guess, kind of what that sounds like to me. The organization becomes their family, their morality, their social life, their meaning, their future, their entire framework for reality. And once that identity becomes fused with the group, leaving will feel like a psychological death. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Another characteristic is financial, sexual, or labor exploitation. Cults often exploit members materially. This can include excessive donations, costs, like you must buy this next class to gain favor, unpaid labor, financial dependence, so all of your money becomes the cult's money, so you don't have your own to leave, sexual coercion, which we've seen in a few of these, or pressure to sacrifice your careers and assets, which again, that happens more than you think, and in some of the churches. So leaders frequently benefit disproportionately. Meanwhile, members are told sacrifice proves commitment. And importantly, the exploitation usually escalates gradually. So you're not it's not like one day you're living in the lap of luxury and the next day you're working 12-hour like physical labor job. It's not happening all at once. The gradual escalation is why many members don't recognize the manipulation until years later. So just real quickly looking at why people stay, since many of us have asked, why didn't you just leave? People stay because they fear losing that community. They fear being wrong. They're invested because they've spent years of their lives or all of their money. Their identity is intertwined with the group, or they really believe catastrophe is going to happen if they leave. And some stay because they still love people inside. So if you're a mom, a sister, a wife, if you're wanting to leave, but none of your people are wanting to leave, it's really hard to leave. So you stay.
On some of the documentaries on Scientology, when they're interviewing people that have left, like, but their families are still in there, like they've lost their kids, they've lost wives, or spouses, they've lost parents, and because they left and couldn't do it anymore, and then they no longer they have to start their lives over with making new family and friends and
grieving that loss of everything. That's just awful. Others stay because leaving means rebuilding an entire worldview from scratch. And that process could be emotionally devastating, which I believe. Like I said, you're grieving the loss of everything you knew and then having to start fresh with how do I really see the world? That is a lot. Modern cults, well, today the dynamics exist far beyond isolated compounds. The internet has changed everything. So modern high control groups can form around conspiracy movements, online influencers, extremist politics, self-improvement empires, financial gurus, wellness communities, and algorithm-driven echo chambers. You don't necessarily need geography anymore. You just need emotional manipulation, identity reinforcement, information control, and social pressure. Digital environments can intensify all of those things. Understanding cults is not about paranoia, it's about recognizing manipulation before it becomes domination. And how terrifying is that for the young adult brains that aren't fully formed, that might be online trying to find their people? The reality is human beings are vulnerable to influence. All of us are, especially during periods of uncertainty, loneliness, grief, transition, or meaning seeking. And so this is why education really matters. Healthy communities encourage curiosity, autonomy, transparency, disagreement, and informed consent. Destructive cults punish those things. So if a group is demanding absolute obedience, and by group, I would even argue a church. But church is demanding this, or any organization. If they isolate you from loved ones, if they discourage questions, if they claim that they have the exclusive truth or make you fear leaving, those are serious warning signs. So the second one of those pops up, give yourself 2 weeks off from them and see how you feel. If you or someone you know has left a high control group, just understand recovery will take time. They are trying to rebuild trust, identity, and independence, and understanding that none of that is a weakness. So they're on a journey, a really tough one. They have to reconstruct themselves psychologically. So let's touch back on some common criteria researchers use when evaluating whether a group exhibits cult-like characteristics, and then we'll examine our previous podcast groups to see how and if they connect to the criteria. And then finally, I'll identify 3 warning signs everyone should watch for when evaluating any organization. So we'll try and trim it down to just a few.
Love it.
So from research, recurring characteristics among the most commonly cited are charismatic, unquestionable leadership, exclusive access to truth, us versus them thinking, high levels of behavioral control, punishment for dissent, isolation, exploitation, and difficulty leaving. It's important to note a group doesn't need every one of these traits to be considered cult-like. And researchers often evaluate the overall pattern. So these are the most common characteristics, but they're really just looking for pattern. So are you ready to jump into our episodes? Okay.
Yep.
So we started.
Put that here. Oh, never mind.
Oh, sorry. We are going to look at Heaven's Gate, which was our first episode, which you probably can't hear because our audio wasn't great. So to recap, Heaven's Gate emerged in the 1970s under the leadership of Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. Members believed they could ascend to a higher evolutionary level and eventually leave Earth for an extraterrestrial existence. The movement became infamous after the mass suicide of 39 members in 1997 during the appearance of Comet Hale-Bopp. So how does Heaven's Gate compare to our criteria? Under the category of leadership, they were a very strong match. Applewhite was viewed as possessing unique spiritual authority. They also match with exclusive truth. Members believed they had access to special cosmic knowledge unavailable to the general public. They also match with us versus them thinking. The broader world was often portrayed as spiritually misguided.
Yep. They were definitely taken away from their family and isolated.
Yep, that's another strong match. The isolation is. Behavioral control was a strong match. So members adopted strict rules governing their appearance, behavior, possessions, sexuality, and relationships. And they also had difficulty leaving. This one was more mixed. It's not the strong match that the others are. Some members did leave voluntarily, but remaining members faced powerful psychological commitments. So that one was mixed. Some people had difficulty, some did not. So the conclusion on Heaven's Gate. Among scholars, Heaven's Gate is widely regarded as one of the clearest examples of a cult due to its combination of authoritarian leadership, isolation, totalistic beliefs, and extreme behavioral control. So they mark the criteria or meet the criteria to be considered a cult.
Interesting.
Our next podcast, which I think you also can't hear.
Our first two were rough. Okay?
Yeah, we're on the learning bus.
Now we have
here.
Brendan, and he's amazing and takes care of all the sound.
He's so good to us. So Nixium, this one, as a reminder, was founded by Keith Raniere. It presented itself as a personal development and executive coaching organization. Over time, investigations revealed secret subgroups, coercive practices, branding rituals, and exploitation. Raniere was eventually convicted on multiple federal charges. So let's compare Nixium to the criteria. Under leadership, they are an extremely strong match, is what the results say. Raniere was treated by many followers as a uniquely brilliant authority figure. Under exclusive truth, strong match, Nixium promoted the idea that its methods provided superior insight and personal growth. On the us versus them thinking, they were a moderate to strong match. Critics and defectors were frequently portrayed negatively. So it wasn't as extreme as it could have been, but it was strong enough to meet the criteria. Behavioral control was a strong match. Evidence showed extensive influence over members' relationships, eating habits, personal choices, and sexual conduct. Punishment for dissent was a strong match. Defectors reported intimidation, surveillance, and retaliation. Exploitation was an extremely strong match. Financial, emotional, and sexual exploitation were central allegations and later became part of criminal prosecutions. So the conclusion is Nixium is widely considered by scholars, journalists, and former members to have exhibited many classic cult characteristics, especially coercive control and exploitation centered around a dominant leader.
Yeah, so, that one was crazy.
Yeah, very wild. All right, our next episode, Miss Teal Swan. I don't know if we had audio by this point. We did? Okay, all right. We had audio, so you might have heard this one. Teal Swan and her self-help community. This particular group is a little more disputed. Unlike Heaven's Gate or Nixium, there is no broad scholarly consensus labeling her organization as a cult. However, critics and former followers have raised concerns. So there's no like solid label. Nobody sue us. We're just citing opinions here, not actual results.
Yes.
So comparing the criteria. Under leadership, it's a moderate match. Swan is a highly influential central figure whose personal teachings are a major focus, but it sounds like not strong enough to meet the criteria. Under exclusive truth, partial match. Critics argue some messaging implies access to unusually deep psychological or spiritual insight. I might touch back on that when we get to the final result here. Under us versus them thinking, there's mixed evidence. Some former followers have described discouragement from trusting outside critics, while supporters dispute this characterization. Under behavioral control, evidence is mixed. Compared with groups like Heaven's Gate or Nixium, there appears to be significantly less formal control over daily life, which is good to hear. Under isolation, generally weaker evidence. No strong public evidence suggests systematic isolation comparable to classic cults. Under exploitation, debated. Critics have raised concerns regarding influence and vulnerability of followers, while supporters argue participation is voluntary and beneficial. The conclusion is that the Teal Swan case is controversial. Some observers identify cult-like features surrounding charisma and influence, while others view the organization as an unconventional self-help movement that does not exhibit the full pattern associated with high-control cults. And under that exclusive truth bucket, I wanted to touch back on that because while there may be damage occurring from the treatment method or whatever you call it might not be called treatment method, but from the services that she provides, it does sound like there is a great deal of choice in this. And this is just if you want to go an extremist route to see what your deepest, darkest problems are, to try to confront them in a different way than is scientifically safe, that is your individual choice. So they don't have the exclusive truth, but they have a truth that works for some portion of the population. Unfortunately, it could cause harm to another.
Because that was and I think that's, thinking back on that episode, I do think that is kind of how we even came to the conclusion of, no, it's not necessarily cult-like, doesn't have all the features, but there's things that could be worrisome for some because of the harm and that it can seeking help from somebody that's not necessarily licensed and I mean, but again, you do have your own choice to walk away from it.
And what a great case for teaching people how to objectively research and see what positive outcomes and negative outcomes have happened in an organization to determine if you want to take the risk.
Yeah.
Because it'll be a risk. So glad to hear one of them doesn't fit the criteria.
One so far.
Maybe another. Switching to the Playboy Mansion lifestyle. So this is about the culture surrounding the Playboy Mansion and Hugh Hefner. Former residents have offered wildly differing accounts, and some describe glamorous opportunities from living in the Playboy Mansion. Others describe manipulation, dependency, and control. So applying our criteria, how do they stack up? Leadership was a moderate match, which kind of surprised me. Yeah. Hefner was unquestionably the central authority figure.
Yeah.
But must not have been as powerful or influential as, charismatic. Maybe he's not charismatic.
Yeah.
He's just rich and controlling.
Interesting.
I don't know.
I figured that would be a little bit higher.
I did too.
Like moderate too strong. Interesting.
But he also dictates kind of the leadership layer of his system.
True.
So he's not necessarily the one they all work up to, but there's a system everybody must adhere to. So maybe that layering is a little different.
Or more pyramid scheme-ish, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. Kinda. That could be why. That's interesting. Under exclusive truth, it was a weak match. There was generally no claim to special spiritual or ideological truth. This one to me was very financial and fame driven. So it wasn't about the spiritual or ideological. Under the us versus them thinking, this was a weak to moderate match. Okay. Some reports suggest an insular social environment, but not necessarily a comprehensive worldview, dividing insiders and outsiders. I personally think that's because the women were looked at as product, not as followers.
Yeah.
Behavioral control was a moderate to strong match, which makes sense. I would have said strong match.
Yeah.
Former residents have described curfews, appearance expectations, and restrictions on personal autonomy.
Yeah.
Under isolation, moderate match. I mean,
they could leave, I guess.
You could leave.
Yeah,
just not be welcomed back. So some accounts suggest social dependency on the mansion life. So that's probably why it's moderate. Exploitation. This is where the concerns become strongest. Critics and former participants have alleged emotional, financial, and sexual exploitation. I mean, and people took drugs, and I don't know if they felt pressured to or were forced to. Who knows?
Yeah. Or not told.
That's true. It was a sick place.
Yeah.
The conclusion here is that most scholars would not classify the Playboy Mansion culture as a classic cult because it lacked a comprehensive ideological system and claims of exclusive truth. However, some observers argue it displayed cult-like dynamics involving power imbalance, for sure, dependency, and control. So
interesting.
Yeah, so
that was a little more than I thought it would be.
Cult-like, than the moderate too strong. Yeah.
Interesting.
For sure. And then our most recent episode, Bikram Yoga. This was examining Bikram Yoga and the founder, Bikram Chaudhuri. Bikram built a worldwide yoga empire centered on a standardized sequence of poses practiced in heated rooms. Over time, numerous allegations emerged regarding misconduct and abuse. So, applying the criteria. Leadership, strong match. The organization revolved heavily around Chaudhry's authority and personal reputation. Under exclusive truth, I feel like Maury Povich.
I know, right? You are
the father. Under leadership, you are the father. Strong match. The organization revolved heavily around Chaudhry's authority and personal reputation. Leadership. Under exclusive truth, moderate match.
Interesting.
Followers were often encouraged to view Bikram's method as uniquely effective. So encouraged, but not required.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice.
Yeah.
Us versus them thinking. Some evidence exists, but it's generally weaker than in a classic cult example. Under behavioral control, moderate match. Teacher training programs reportedly involved significant demands and loyalty expectations, but maybe it's saying beyond that it wasn't as terrible.
Yeah.
Under isolation, there's generally weaker evidence for this. Participants usually maintained ordinary lives outside of the organization, so that's good. Under exploitation, strong match. Numerous allegations and legal findings involved abuse of power and exploitation. So that one's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
The conclusion is that most researchers would not place Bikram yoga in the same category as highly totalistic groups such as Heaven's Gate or NXIVM. However, critics frequently point to significant cult-like elements involving charismatic authority, loyalty demands, and exploitation.
Interesting.
So our final takeaways after looking at all 5 cases, the biggest warning signs. If you're evaluating any organization, please pay special attention to these 3 things. Number 1, the leader cannot be questioned. When criticism becomes forbidden, accountability will disappear. Healthy organizations tolerate scrutiny. So question. Even just question to see if you're allowed to question. Even if you don't feel like questioning, just do it. Just make sure you're in a safe place. Number 2, the group tries to control your relationships and decisions. Be cautious if an organization seeks influence over your family ties, your finances, your romantic life, your career choices, or your daily behavior. Yeah. My God, I just thought of the Mormon church. Yeah. I love a lot of Mormons, so this is not a diss to my friends. That's immediately the picture that popped in my mind. Number 3, leaving carries serious social or psychological consequences. A healthy group allows people to leave without fear. A high control group often makes departure emotionally costly. So again, those 3 things. Leader cannot be questioned. The group tries to control your relationships and decisions, and leaving carries serious social or psychological consequences. So you put those in your pocket, apply them to everything you do, even your church. So the key lesson is that cults aren't defined by unusual beliefs alone. Many groups have unusual beliefs. What matters more is the degree of control, dependency, exploitation, and authority concentrated within the organization. When evaluating any movement, ask not merely what do they believe, but also how much power does the organization have over the lives of its members. So that wraps up our 6th, our half-year mark episode of Culty Country.
Go.
Yes, in this bumpy ride of how do we podcast ?
Yeah. We're figuring it out.
Yeah. So we've come a long way. We've looked at 5 really unique, could be cult-like organizations, a couple that ended up being, and a couple that did not, which I think is a healthy way to approach this. Do you happen to know what's coming in July?
I don't, but after doing this, with Scientology honestly being so
applicable
to so many of them, I kind of think I might look in doing a small portion. I mean, it could only be a small portion, otherwise it would be like a 20-hour podcast and nobody's going to listen to that. So
okay, so Scientology maybe for July.
I think so.
And then my hope is in August, I would like to touch on World Mission Society Church of God.
Yeah.
And then there would be a secondary episode to that where we interview a very loved person in my world, one of my favorite human beings on the planet, who had become part of that church and left. And so we will examine it in a in a session, and then we'll have an interview for another session and get her perspective as somebody on the inside who may or may not think it is a cult. So it would be interesting to hear straight from a member from their perspective. So
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, so
I'm
that'll
excited.
get us into fall kickoff.
Yeah.
Ooh, and then might want to do a more paranormal
for
topic
October.
for October. Yeah.
Because we could definitely do August and September as the world mission.
Yeah.
Just do
double duty. And then, so we might have more nuanced and fun things coming up, still revolving around the idea of cult-like organizations. If you have an idea, please email us at cultycountry@gmail.com or leave us a comment on this post if you can sit through the whole thing or even the first minute of it. As usual, thank you to Brendan, our fearless audio expert who got us functional after a few months. And will
hopefully there was a small child running around upstairs at some point. So if you could hear that, just thanks for being patient with that.
Yeah, maybe we could build that into our ghost story in October.
Exactly.
That would be a good idea.
We'll have him running around for sure.
How bad was the audio, Brendan? Could you hear the pitter patter?
Not that I.
Okay, good.
Okay.
There was just one point when I looked over and you were like, and I was like, oh no.
Oh no.
Okay.
All right. Well, then
just in case.
If you didn't hear it, there was a toddler running laps up above us. So our house is not haunted, is what I should say. Okay, we'll see you in July for a little look at Scientology. And thanks for hanging with us.
Thanks, everybody.